Welcome to all engineering students. I am K. Nagarjan Reddy, Deputy Executive Engineer, Panchayat Raj Engineering Department. Today I am going to present a lecture on building construction. So this topic is divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. So part 1, building construction. So first, you all know what are the roles and responsibilities of engineering students. So for the past 1 year, you are successfully working in the department. So I am not stressing on the roles and responsibilities as you are already doing the work. Introduction to Panchayat Raj Engineering Department. So you all know that we are constructing roads and buildings in Panchayat Raj Engineering Department. So already some other lecturer, so he will cover the aspects of roads. So today in this lecture we are going to discuss about buildings, particularly the buildings which are being constructed in rural areas. So you all know that Panchayat Raj Department is responsible for planning, constructing and maintaining buildings in rural areas. So we are going to construct village clinics, Grama Sachivalayams, Mandal office buildings, MRO office buildings and buildings for other sister engineering departments. So every building should be planned, designed and constructed as per the codal provisions. So Bureau of Indian Standard has published so many IS codes and special publications in the form of handbooks. So National Building Code is one of such book, and also there is a handbook on building construction and summaries of building materials. So we have to follow these guidelines, we have to follow the guidelines issued in these code books. So this is the National Building Code. So it is a comprehensive book covering all aspects of building construction. So it is published in part 1 and part 2. So these are some other books which are useful to all engineering students. Summaries of all building materials. So here in this book, in this manual, so you will find all the characteristics, properties of all building materials, and another book that is a special publication. So again, handbook on building construction, where all the specifications and workmanship of the construction procedures will be indicated in this one. There is one more book, handbook of measurements of building works. So here, how to measure, what are the units for the measurements, all these things will be covered in these handbooks. So everyone should refer these handbooks before executing any buildings. So what is a building? Any building for whatsoever purpose and with whatever materials it is constructed, it is known as a building. So the building consists of foundations, plinth, roof, floors, etc., all these things. But whereas as per this code, tarpaulins, shaminas, tents, etc., which are constructed temporarily, they will not come under buildings. So what are the stages involved in the construction of the building? So there are many stages in the construction of a building. So first one is finalization of architectural plans. So what do you mean by finalization of architectural plans? So architectural plans means, so every department they will have some requirements. So how many rooms have to be constructed, what are the sizes of the room. So all these things they will be decided in the architectural plans as per the user department requirements. Second one is selection of site and feasibility of site. So you have to select a site as per the requirement of the buildings. So what are the dimensions, what is its orientation, whether drainage facilities, water facilities are available or not, power supply is available or not, all these things you have to look into. Next one, necessary permissions for demolishing, or if there are any big trees in that site, you have to obtain from the concerned or appropriate departments. Orientation of the building. So building orientation means, so with respect to lighting, with respect to sun, etc., how you have to orient the building, that we will see it later. Next is soil investigation. So another important aspect engineering student should do is safe bearing capacity of the soil. So soil investigation. So next one is structural designs and drawings. So for most of our buildings, structural designs and drawings, there will be prototype designs which will be supplied by the department. So here you need not design any building, but if you can understand those drawings and designs, it is sufficient. Next one is designs and drawings. Next you have to prepare an estimate. So estimate will be prepared, as you know, estimate will be prepared based upon standard data and standard schedule of rates. So next one is entrustment of work. So entrustment of work will be done by the competent authority. Next, and after entrustment, next execution. So execution, this is the main part which you are going to do, execution. So here in this execution of the work, you have to observe some do's and don'ts at every stage. So that we will be concentrating more in this lecture. Next, after execution of the work, we will be handing over to the building to the concerned department. So these are the important stages which are involved in the construction of any building. Next, design and construction standard. As I already told you, so there will be prototype designs for each and every building to suit local conditions. We need not design a separate design for every building. So there will be standard type designs which will be communicated by the head of the department. So in areas prone to natural disasters like cyclone, tsunamis, etc. So we have to disaster resilient feature should be built in this one. Next, while constructing the building or while designing the building, so we have to consider the natural factors like rainfall, wind, sun direction, etc. all these things, so which will come under the orientation of the building. So to make the construction economical, we should use the local construction materials which are available in the area. Next, components of the building. So a building is generally divided into two components, substructure and superstructure. So what is substructure? Substructure is that part of the building which transmits load from the superstructure to the ground. So that is called substructure. So your foundation, plinth, DPC, etc. comes under substructure. Then what is superstructure? The portion of the building above the substructure is called superstructure. So under this superstructure, we will be studying walls, roofs, floors, etc., doors, windows, all these comes under superstructure. So here this photograph shows the different components of the building. Again, these superstructures, they are classified in based on the load transfer. So load bearing structures and framed structures. So load bearing structures means here the load of the structure is transferred to the ground through walls. So here the load of the structure is transferred to the ground through the walls. So load from roofs and floors is get transferred to the walls, and from walls it is transferred to the soil. So these type of constructions are generally used in residential buildings or where we go for 1 or 2 floors, ground plus first floor or 2 floors only. Next one is a framed structure. So in this type of structure, a framework of columns, beams and floors are built first. Then walls are constructed only to partition the area. So here only the self weight of the walls is considered. No load will be acting on the walls. So it is a framed structure. So this type of structure is generally used for multi-storied buildings or where the dimensions of the rooms are very large. Then we go for framed structures. So here the photograph shows the load bearing structure and framed structure. So starting a new building. So before starting a new building, what you have to do? Preparation of building construction site. So the beginning of a job is utmost importance compared to other stages of the work. So you know that well begun is half done. So starting should be without any problems, you have to start the work. So a majority of the construction projects are delayed because due to lack of planning, non-availability of drawings and designs and faulty executions of methods of construction. Therefore, this aspect should be considered or given importance. Next, there are some stages in starting a new building. So first one is cleaning site and leveling the ground. So before giving a layout marking, so first the site should be cleaned of bushes, vegetation, etc. and it should be leveled. If there are any undulations or soil heaps, so it should be leveled. Next, if any big trees are there, they should be cut off. Trees which will be forming obstruction to the buildings, they should be removed with the permission of the competent authority. That means the forest department people, they will give permission to remove big trees. So this is a picture which shows leveling, cleaning and leveling of site. Next thing is boundaries marking. After leveling the site, then boundaries are marked at every corner or turning point of the site. At every corner or turning point of the site, so concrete stones are dig into the soil at specific distances. So during the initial marking process, references from other boundary lines, we have to consider all these things. So this initial boundary will help us to know whether there are any problems from other site owners. So if there are any other problems with the other site owners, then we can eliminate at this stage only. If there are no problems, then final boundary marking will be done. So next, demarcation by theodolite survey. So actual demarcation should be done with reference to the existing boundaries using theodolite. Next, contour survey. So contour survey means the actual level up and downs of the plot. This survey should be done by dumpy level. So planning for approach roads. So you have to plan for approach roads, water supply arrangements and drainage arrangements, temporary electricity, etc. before constructing any building. So next one is line out and building setting. So these are the two important basic requirements for starting any building successfully, any project successfully. So if you commit any mistakes in lining out of a building, sometimes we have to demolish a part of the building. So these two items should be given due consideration, line out and building setting, for completing a project successfully. So it is better if the line out is checked by higher officers also. Before the start of the construction work, the center line of the foundation of the building must be marked on the ground as per the layout plan. This process is known as setting out or layout marking. The center lines of other walls which are perpendicular to the long walls are then marked by setting out right angles. So right angle can be set out by forming a triangle with the units 3, 4, 5. So you can make use of hypotenuse formula, 3 square plus 4 square is equal to 5 square. So the diagonal should be checked out, ensuring right angles all the corner. So this is a detailed line out of the project. So line out of the individual building and marking of the excavation of footings with lime powder is shown here. So before going into actual construction, so first we will study a briefly about materials of construction. So what are the materials used in construction? So you all know that stone, bricks, lime, cement, sand, aggregate, mortar, concrete and other civil engineering materials are used in materials of construction. So we will discuss some important aspects of these building materials. So first one is stone. The stone which is used for building construction should be strong, hard and durable. All stones should be seasoned before they are used in construction. So because if they are not seasoned, they will contain some quarry stuff. So all the stones should be seasoned before they are used in the construction work. So there are some properties of the stones. So crushing strength should be more than 100 Newton per. Specific gravity of the stone which is used in building construction should be more than 2.7 and it should not absorb water more than 0.6% by weight. So this can be tested by water absorption session. Stones obtained from quarrying will have a rough surface. Therefore, all the stones obtained from quarrying should be dressed well. So what do we mean by dressing? Dressing is the process of cutting the stones into regular shapes and size with the required finished surface. So another important aspect which you have to consider in this stone is natural bed of the stone. The plane along which the stones can be easily split is known as natural bed of the stone. So in a stone masonry work, the stone should be used in such a way that the direction of the applied load is perpendicular to the natural bed of the stone. So here in this figure, the correct position and incorrect position of the stone is showed. So you have to remember that the stone is always placed in a direction that the applied load is perpendicular to the natural bed of the stone. So another important material which we are going to use is bricks. So most of the time we will be using bricks only, as stones are not available in many places or it may be costly. So brick is very common building material which is used for constructing both partition walls and load bearing walls. So whereas your stone, you cannot use it for a partition wall. Stone can be used only for load bearing walls only. So bricks you can use it for both partition wall and load bearing wall. So mostly we will be using bricks. So how do you obtain bricks? Bricks are obtained by molding clay in rectangular blocks of uniform size and then by drying and burning these bricks. So there is a separate code IS 1077/1992 common burnt clay building bricks specification. As per this code, the standard size of the brick is 190 mm by 90 mm by 90 mm. So with mortar, the finished brick will be 200 mm by 100 mm by 100 mm. Test for bricks. So a brick is generally subjected to the following tests to assess its suitability in building construction: absorption, crushing strength, hardness, presence of soluble salts, shape and size, soundness and structure. So we will discuss one by one. Absorption test. So a brick should not absorb water more than 20% of weight of dry brick. So if it is immersed in a water for a period of 16 hours, it should not absorb water more than 20% by weight. Compressive strength and crushing strength of the bricks. So the compressive strength is found by placing it in a compressive testing machine. So load is applied till it breaks. So as per the code, the minimum compression strength should not be less than 35 kg per centimeter square or 3.5 Newton per mm square. Hardness test on the bricks. So hardness test on the bricks. So this is done just by simply scratching the brick with your nail. If no impression is left on the brick, then you can say that the brick is sufficiently hard. Presence of soluble salts. So you have to test for the presence of the soluble salts. So what is the problem with the soluble salts? The soluble salts cause efflorescence on the surface of the bricks. So to know the presence of the salts, you have to immerse the brick in water for a period of 24 hours and allow to dry in the shade. The presence of white spots on the brick indicates the presence of soluble salts. So if no deposition is there, so it indicates nil efflorescence. So 10% of the area slight efflorescence, like that moderate efflorescence, heavy and serious efflorescence. So here the figure indicates the efflorescence in the bricks. Next, shape and size. So shape and size. So all bricks should be of uniform shape and uniform size only. So we have to test whether all the bricks are right. So you cannot test a single brick for its shape and size. So you will be taking 10 bricks and we will measure its length and we will take the average of them. So it should give the same length. Similarly width, similarly height of the bricks. So a good quality brick should have uniform shape and uniform size. Soundness test on the brick. So this is tested by striking two bricks together. If it gives some ringing sound, it is good. Structure of the brick. So a brick is taken and it is broken and its structure is observed. So it should not show any defects such as holes or humps etc. in the brick. Next important material is cement. Different types of cement. So ordinary Portland cement, rapid hardening cement, sulfate resisting cement, Portland slag cement, quick setting cement, low heat cement, air entraining cement, colored cement, hydrophobic cement, oil well cement, high alumina cement. So for all these cements there are codes. Each cement is applicable for some purpose. So generally in building construction we will be using only ordinary Portland cement. So we will discuss only ordinary Portland cement in this lecture. So the Bureau of Indian Standards has classified OPC into 3 different grades. So the classification is mainly based on the compressive strength of cement sand mortar cubes of face area 50 centimeter square, composed of 1 part of cement and composed of 3 parts of standard sand. So here standard sand is used for the preparation of cement mortar. So standard sand generally as per IS code we will take it as Ennore sand. So IS code 650 gives specification for standard sand for testing of cement. So the grades are 33 grade, 43 grade and 53 grade. So the codes are mentioned here in this slide. So what do you mean by the grade? So the grade number indicates the minimum compressive strength of the cement sand mortar in Newton per mm square tested after 28 days by the above mentioned procedure. So field test for cement. So there are some simple tests which you can do in the field itself without going to the laboratory. First one is checking the month of manufacture cement. On every cement bag, the month of manufacture, year of manufacture and week of the manufacture is printed on the bag. So when you receive the cement bags, you have to check for the month, week and etc. So you know that cement as per age, if it is a long storage cement, then it strength reduces. In this tabular form you can see that if the cement is 3 months old, the percentage reduction in the strength will be 20 to 30%. If it is 6 months old, 30 to 40%. Similarly, if it is 12 months, so the strength will be reduced by 40 to 50%. So if the cement is stored for 1 year in the godowns, then it loses its strength by 40 to 50%. We should use only fresh cement in our building works. Another one is color test of the cement. So take a handful of cement in your hand and observe its colors. So it should be normally dark greenish color. If you observe any light color, means it may be an older one or some moisture is affecting that cement. Presence of lumps. Again, take some handful of cement into your hand and observe whether any lumps are there. If there are lumps, means the cement starts setting. No lumps means there is no setting. So we have to use the cement where there are no lumps. Temperature test of the cement, another one. So keep your hand in the cement. So you should feel it cool. If you feel it something warm, then it indicates that hydration is started in the cement and it's losing its strength. Adulteration test. So adulteration test, take a small pinch of cement between your fingers and just rub it. If it is smooth, it is not adulterated. If you feel some gritty, then it indicates some silt is added to the cement. That means it is adulterated. Next, float test. So take a pinch of cement and just throw it in a bucket of water. If it sinks immediately, it indicates presence of impurities. If it floats for some time and then sinks, so it indicates a pure cement. So another material is aggregate. So aggregates are the major and important constituents of concrete. They form the body of concrete as it occupies 7 to 80% of the volume of the concrete. So aggregates which are used in building construction or particularly in the RCC work, they should be well graded. What do you mean by well graded? Well graded means it should contain all sizes, all fractions of the stones. So this coarse aggregate can be classified into two types, coarse aggregate and fine aggregate. Coarse aggregate means the particles which are retained on IS 4.75 mm sieve, they are known as coarse aggregate, and the aggregate which passes through 4.75 mm sieve, it is known as fine aggregate, and this fine aggregate should retain on 150 microns fine sieve. So fine aggregate is also known as sand. So coarse aggregate. So what is the maximum size of the coarse aggregate which is used in the building? So we have to use as large size as possible. In any case, the size of the aggregate should not be more than 1/4 of the minimum thickness of the member. So if our slab thickness is 100 mm, so the maximum size should be 25 mm. It should not exceed more than 1/4 of the minimum thickness of the member. But for most work, 20 mm aggregate is used. In RCC work, generally we use 20 mm aggregate for all beams or columns, whatever it may be. So angular and roughly cubical particles in shape are ideal. So aggregate particles which are in angular are cubical. So cubical means surface area will be less. So we have to use such particles. So elongated and flaky particles should not be used, should be avoided. So the normal weight of the stone aggregate in loose state is 1400 to 1600 kg per cubic meter. Aggregate shall comply with the IS code 383, which is revised in 2016. Coarse and fine aggregate shall be batched separately while you are mixing concrete. So grading of stone. So IS 383 2016 has divided the sand into 4 zones, that is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 and zone 4. Sand falling in grade 1 is coarse and that falling in zone 4 is fine. So from 1 to zone 4, so it will be from coarse to fine grain. So generally in RCC work we will be using the sand which falls in zone 1, zone 2 and zone 3 only. The sand which falls in zoning 4 is not used in RCC work as it will be very fine. So fine sand, it can be used for plastering or for some other works. So for all RCC works, only coarser sand and sand which falls in zone 1 and zone 3 are to be used. The specification for sand for plaster is given in code IS 1542/1992. So here is the gradation of sand shown in the tabular form. 600 micron sieve, there will be no overlapping of the percentages. So with reference to this 600 micron sieve, so we will be grading the sand into zone 1, 2, 3 and 4. Ways to check the quality of sand at site. So presence of salt. So there should not be any salt present in the sand. So how to test it? So you have to actually taste the sand. If you feel any salty taste, then it indicates the presence of salts. Presence of organic impurities. So for detecting the presence of organic impurities in sand, solution of sodium hydroxide or caustic soda 3% solution is added to the sand and it is stirred. If the color changes to brown, it indicates the presence of organic impurities. Presence of clay and silt. Sand is taken from a heap of sand and it is rubbed against fingers. If fingers are stained, it indicates the sand contains silt or clay. Presence of clay is very dangerous as sand is cohesionless and clay is cohesive in nature. As silt is very fine, it will affect the strength of the cement. We already discussed that sand which is finer is generally not used in RCC work. So if it contains more silt, so we should not use such sand because it will affect the strength of the cement. Ways to check the quality of cement at site. So another test is test for silt content in the sand. So there is another test which is mentioned in the code, that is a test for silt content in the sand. So in this test, the percentage of silt should not be more than 8%. So we cannot get a sand without silt. So therefore the code has limited that, has permitted up to 8%. Next, bulking of sand. So another important property of sand is bulking of sand. So bulking of a sand is a phenomenon where volume of sand increases due to moisture content present in it. Bulking of sand is nothing but increase of volume due to presence of moisture. So if the sand is fully saturated, so there will not be any bulking of sand. If the sand is also dry, there will not be any bulking of sand. So only if the sand is something, if it is contains some moisture from 5 to 8%, so the volume of the sand increases some 5 to 8%. So the bulking of sand also depends upon the grading of the sand. So in fine sand, bulking will be more compared to coarse sand. Next one, cement mortar. So mortar is nothing but a workable paste by adding water to a binding material and fine aggregate to achieve the right consistency. What do you mean by consistency? Consistency means the property of holding together all the ingredients without leading to segregation of mortar. Mortar is essentially used in masonry work, plastering, pointing, etc. So this plastic paste is used to hold building materials such as stone or brick or cement blocks together. The cement mortar, if it is used for more than 30 minutes, then it should be discarded, it should be rejected and it should not be used. So this is a cement mortar. Sand plus cement plus water gives you cement mortar. So there are simple tests for determining the quality of the cement mortar. The mixed proportion of the cement mortar. So cement mortar, so it will be in the ratio of 1:3 or 1:4 or 1:5 depending upon the type of the work. So that can be checked. So your cement proportion, mixed proportion can be taken. So take some 200 grams of green cement and add ml of water and check the contents well. So by measuring the volume of the sand and cement, you can roughly estimate the proportion of the mix. So mortar consistency can also be checked by the following. So take a small quantity of mortar is dropped from a trowel. The trowel should be clean. So there should not be any motor stick to the trowel. A little motor is taken in a hand and it is molded into a ball, so on the surface of which water should appear. When the ball is dropped from a height of half a meter on a hard surface, it must retain its shape, it should not break. So the cement proportion, different proportions are used for different type of works. For masonry works 1:6 to 1:8, for plastering works 1:3 to 1:4, and plastering of concrete to 1:3, for pointing works 1:2 to 1:3. Concrete is prepared by mixing cement, that is binding material, coarse aggregate and fine aggregate with required quantity of water in required proportions. So the quality of concrete depends upon the type of the cement, type of the aggregates, water mix proportions, etc. IS 456/2000 gives the specifications for plain and reinforced concrete. So here in the picture it is shown. So cement plus stone aggregate plus sand plus water gives you concrete. So steel reinforcement. What is steel reinforcement? So here you all know that concrete is good in compression, but it is weak in tension. So therefore, we will be using steel as a reinforcing material. So steel reinforcements are used generally in the form of bars of circular cross section in concrete structure. They are like a skeleton in our human body. So what are the different types of steel reinforcement used? So there are mainly two types of steel reinforcement bar. Mild steel bars conforming to IS 432 Part 1 1982, and cold worked steel high strength deformed bars conforming to IS 1786 1985. Building construction, generally we use mild steel bars of 6 mm diameter for secondary reinforcement, and cold twisted deformed steel bars of diameter 8, 10, 12, 16, 20, 25, 32 and 40 mm are used for main reinforcement. In building construction, if possible, we have to use a bar of full length. The overlap, if given, should be staggered. Field test for reinforcement. So field test for quality of steel bars. The diameter of the bar should not vary. For measuring the diameter of the bar, we use screw gauge or vernier calipers. Steel should not be brittle in nature, but soft for working. It should not break into pieces during bending. Steel should not be corroded. This can be checked by rusting layer on bars and taking the weight of the steel bar before and after immersion in the water for 24 hours. So the loss of weight indicates that it is corroded. Field test for binding wire. The binding wire should be of 16 gauge. It should be soft in working and it should not be brittle. So weight of the different steel bars. So given for any bar, you can find out the weight of the bar by using the formula d square by 162 kg, where d is the diameter of the bar in mm. For example, for 10 mm diameter bar, so the weight per meter length will be 10 into 10 by 162, that gives you 0.1. So here the table gives you standard weights of the bars per meter length, which you have to remember and by heart all these things. Admixtures used in concrete. So in addition to cement, coarse aggregate, fine aggregate and water, sometimes we will be using admixtures. So what is the purpose of these admixtures? Admixtures are used to improve the quality of concrete in fresh and hardened state. So admixtures can be broadly classified into two categories. They are chemical admixtures and mineral admixtures. Admixtures, if used, they should conform to the IS code 9103. So what are the admixtures used in concrete? So the important admixtures which are used in concrete are plasticizers and superplasticizers. So they are also known as water reducing admixtures. So these admixtures permit reduction of water up to 30% without reduction in workability. So retarders, so they are used for to slow down the process of hydration. Accelerators, so they are used for getting early strength. Pozzolanic and mineral admixtures like fly ash, blast furnace slag, silica fume, rice husk ash, etc. are also used to modify certain properties of fresh and hardened concrete. So, what type of water is to be used for construction work? Water used for mixing and curing shall be clean and free from injurious amounts of oils, acids, salts, sugar, organic materials and other substances that may be deleterious to the concrete, which may be harmful to the concrete or steel bars. Generally, potable water is generally considered satisfactory. Mixing and curing of concrete with seawater is not permitted or recommended because of the presence of harmful salts. Now, we will discuss about masonry construction. Masonry is one of the main items of the construction in a building. It consists of masonry units such as brick, stone or concrete blocks laid in mortar. There are large variety of units and a number of different types and grades of mortars that are used in the masonry. Masonry is required for construction of foundations, walls, columns, partitions, steps, arches and other similar components of the building. So, Bureau of Indian Standards has published a handbook on masonry design and construction, which is used for building construction purpose. Stones and stone masonry. So, when stones are used as building units, the masonry is termed as stone masonry. So, this construction technique is used for building foundations, floors, retaining walls, arches, walls and columns. The stones used for masonry constructions are natural rocks. Stone as a masonry unit is made use of when brick is either not available or if it is costly. So, these are the different types of masonry constructions. So, what is brick masonry? The process of laying of bricks bonded together with mortar is known as brick masonry. Generally, the cement mortar prepared for brickwork is in the ratio of 1:3 for cement grade of M7.5. Concrete block masonry. So, nowadays, bricks are not available at all the places and concrete blocks are being available at many places. So, a concrete block is a building block made entirely of concrete, which is then bonded together with the mortar to form an imposing long lasting structure. So, these concrete blocks, they may be hollow blocks or solid blocks. They are manufactured in different sizes depending upon the specific requirements. So, they can be used, these concrete blocks can be used both for load bearing walls and non load bearing walls, and they shall conform to the IS code 2185 part 1. So, the stair construction, there are some points to be remembered. What should be the width of the stair? So, the minimum width should be 0.75 meter. What should be the slope of the stairs? So, 30 degrees for comfortable use. Width of the tread, it should not be less than 300 mm. Height of risers. So, height of the risers for public building shall be 150 to 160 mm and they shall be limited to 12 steps per flight. Provision of handrail at proper height. So, handrail should be provided at a height not less than 800 mm and not more than 900 mm. So, headroom. So, the minimum headroom in the passage should not be less than 2.2 meters. Excavation and foundation work. So, the first stage in the construction of the building is excavation and foundation. So, excavation and foundation work is the preliminary activity of the construction project. It starts from digging pits for the building foundations and continues up to the handing over the project. Excavation is needed for foundations of the building, plinth beam, plinth masonry, basement of the building, underground water tank, septic tank, earth pitting, laying of drainage water pipes, etc. So, excavation of foundation, how it is done? So, for small buildings, excavation is carried out manually by means of pickaxes, crowbars, spades, etc. In case of large buildings and deep excavation, we use mechanical equipment, earth cutting equipment can be used. For hard soils, the depth of the excavation is less. For hard soils, if the depth of excavation is less than 1.5 meters, the support is necessary for the trenches. But if the soil is loose and if the depth of the excavation is more, then some sort of shoring is required to support the sides from falling. So, here is the picture which shows shoring for a foundation trench. Dewatering. So sometimes if the groundwater table is very high, so water should be dewatered from the construction site so that it will keep working area good. So dewatering is also, it can be done either manually, it can be removed water or by pumping. So these are some of the pictures which shows the procedure of dewatering. So requirements to start excavation. So while starting the excavation, first you have to study the strata, trial pits. Trial pit has to be taken. Next, testing of soil for bearing capacity, study of availability of foundation drawings, arrangement for safety precautions. So all these things you have to, and arrangements for pumping of the water. So this is the picture where excavation is being carried out. So precautions during excavation of founding works. So this picture gives you some precautions which are to be taken during excavation of the work. So when you have excavated foundations, if there are any trees, roots of the trees, etc., so that should be removed and that should be made good by the concrete only. Foundation. So foundation means lowest part of the structure which is constructed below the ground level. So broadly speaking, all foundations can be classified into two categories: shallow foundations and deep foundations. Shallow foundation means if the depth is less than or equal to breadth of the foundation, we call it as shallow foundations. If the depth is more than the breadth of the foundation, we call it as deep foundations. So what are the functions of foundation? Distribution of loads, stability against sliding and overturning, minimizing differential settlement, safety against undermining, providing level surface, minimize distress against soil movement. So there are different types of foundations. So each is suitable. Why there are different types of foundations? Because the soil differs from place to place. So there are different types of soils. We use different types of foundations. So here we are not going to discuss all these foundations, but in this picture, so I am showing you all the different types of foundations, broadly classified into shallow foundations, deep foundations. Again, they are subclassified into different types of foundations. So generally in rural areas we go only for shallow foundations and individual or spread footings only. So other foundations only for big buildings or multi-story buildings only you have to go for deep foundations. So these are the different types of foundations. So this picture shows the Leaning Tower of Pisa. If only they had proper site investigation, Tower of Pisa will not be leaning today. So site investigation is must. Next item is plain cement concrete work in foundation. So plain cement concrete is nothing but it is a mixture of cement, fine aggregate and coarse aggregate without steel. So if steel is also used, we call it as RCC. So PCC is an important component of the building which is laid on the soil surface to avoid direct contact of the reinforcement with the soil. Before starting any RCC or masonry work directly on the excavated soil, PCC is done to form a leveled surface. So the size of the aggregate used for PCC varies from 10 mm to 40 mm depending on where they are used. So here the important point which you have to remember is for PCC, the slump of 75 to 100 mm may be allowed for foundation work. Another important point which you have to use is the PCC should not be laid in layers not more than 150 mm. So it is laid in a layers of 150 mm only. So there are some do's and don'ts given in this slide. So I am not explaining this. So this is self-explanatory. Just you see this slide. So next item is plinth work. So plinth work, from the architectural and engineering point of view, plinth work is the most important activity in the building construction. All the peripheral and internal room dimensions are to be checked at this stage of work and offsets and projection of the buildings are to be confirmed. So this plinth work is most important as an engineering extent. So you should be very careful at this one. So mistakes committed at plinth level cannot be rectified at a later stage. So the plinth work involves the following: casting of columns up to plinth level, constructing rubble brick masonry up to plinth level, casting of plinth or beams at the designed level, anti-termite treatment in foundation, refilling of column pits and plinth with selected material, DPC over plinth walls, floor PCC, plinth protection, etc. So these are some of the photographs showing plinth filling and compaction plinth beam shuttering, etc. Before concluding this session, I would like to discuss one more important topic, termite proofing work. Destroy termites before they destroy your house or building. Termites causes walls, wood and concrete to become porous by eating them. So anti-termite treatment has to be done for each and every building. What is anti-termite treatment? So it is a chemical procedure carried out to soil, masonry, wood and electrical fixtures to provide the building with a chemical barrier against the termites before and after construction. IS code 6313 gives the code of practice for anti-termite measures in buildings. As per the code, the chemicals used for anti-termite treatment in buildings are chloropyrifos 20 EC and linden 20 EC. The above code covers pre-construction treatment for termite, that is below ground level, termite proofing treatment in superstructure, post-construction anti-termite treatment. Termite proofing has to be done for every 10 years. So I would like to stop here. I will conclude the remaining part in building construction session 2. So in session 2 we will be discussing RCC work and other building finishes such as whitewashing, painting, plumbing work, electrification, etc. Thank you very much.